Yeah, okay, it's a Mark 6 Transit, Ford Transit Mark 6 dashboard. Yeah, okay, that's it taken out. Let's show you it on the other side, what it's like underneath. Okay, I was going to do the digital markup of it, but the job was more important to me than the filming. So even at this point I was going to say, oh no, this is too important, I can't be bothered to do the filming on this, because I want to get this job out of the way and haven't got time to shit around with cameras like for no views and all that. So but for the sake of getting back involved with photography and that, I try and cooperate the two together and show you how these dashboards come out and go in. Obviously you haven't seen how they come out because I've already taken it apart, but I'll show you the process of putting it back in, and I'll give you an explanation of how sort of difficult and how easy it was to get the dashboard out. Saying that, initially, once you've got all the connections off, that are holding it in place, it does come out easy, it just lifts out, but you do have to drop the steering column, and it's a little bit fiddly. I'll point these two pipes out here. You have this pipe here, hopefully you can see that from the camera that I'm using now. You got these two pipes. Initially, when I took the dashboard out, you have to sort of yank them off on the inside and push them underneath out of the way, so they sort of but those were a little bit of a problem initially, but if you understand how to pull those out and push them out of the way, the dashboard's going to come out, because they come out quite easy once you've got those out of the way. The electrical connections, obviously you've got things like what used to be called the cigarette lighters. So there's a cigarette lighter there, the cable have to come off that. There's a cable that has to come off this one if you've got one down there as well. That's where the dashboard clocks go. So there's no real wires in this section apart from the dashboard clocks. And then you've got some electrical wire connections over this side for the front lights and that. And obviously you've got all the central heating controls and the wires for your stereo and whatever in this section. There's an old stack of electrical connections over here as well. That's where they bolted up for that. So if you can see that, they're quite difficult because the bolts were done from underneath, so you had to try and get underneath to undo those, which were quite awkward to do that. So that's sort of the problems with the electrical connections and the heating pipes. I'll quickly show you how it is on the inside of the truck here. The diesel heater going on at the moment, so yeah, I had to wire. These were the electrical connections for there. So there's a stack of electrical connections just there. What were those two bolts just there? I've got it held up on these wires at the moment because I was driving about with it. All these wires are up here. They're for my stereo. So these were sort of extra wires. Those were sort of extra wires for the stereos that I put in. Amplifiers and parametric equalizers and all that. So there's an whole stack of wires there that I put in for my stereos, so they get threaded up underneath. That's the heating stuff, and all those little cables down here just sort of come out and that. I'll show you the other side. The reason I had to do this is because a heater failed. So because the heater failed, I had to get into it and swap the heater out. I mean, swapping the heaters out is pretty simple really, but I'll show you this side too. So those are all the wires there. I say I've got it all wired up, sort of hanging on bits of wire at the moment because I'm driving it about. So these all have to come back out, and you have to look at, you know, putting all those back in. So getting the dashboard out, there's like 4 bolts here for the steering column. There's a bolt there and there's a bolt there, the same the other side. You undo these 4 bolts and the steering column just drops down. Once the steering column's dropped down, it's quite easy for the plastic to come out and go in. I say once you've got all the bolts undone, it does come out fairly easy, you know. It's sort of, once you've got this steering column out of the way, it goes in pretty easy. This sort of roll bar stays in place. I never bothered to take that out, but we sit in the truck and have a look at it over here. That's where the heater gets swapped over. There's a cable down there just behind it. It's very easy to come out once you undo the bolts for this wire. There's like a relay in there, so when you're swapping the heater over, it might be a good idea to have a look at your relay, because your relay might have been blown. It's like a big fuse inside there. So I swapped that over, and I swapped the heater over. It just sort of, you know, goes in and out. But there's a bolt there for putting the dashboard back on, you know, the bolt there, the bolt there, the bolt there. And then all the other little bolts are like plastic bolts there to do with, you know, the plastic. There's bits, there's like some bolts here that hold the plastic on. There's some bolts here that hold the plastic on. There's a bolt that holds the plastic on. There's a few bolts around the dashes, all the plastic bolts, you know. They're sort of like, but the main bolts that seem to hold it on at the front there are those 3. And that's at the front there. So I mean, I'll show you, you know, try to film a little bit of it, putting it back in, so you can get the idea of how it comes out. There are not that many Mark 6 Transits about these days, so, you know, I'm not expecting billions of views on it all, you know. But I'll just show you those bolts that I pointed out a moment ago, where they go. I'll turn this back over. You can see a plastic bolt there, you know, all the little bits for the plastics. There's some like caps in there. You just pop these caps out and then you can get to the bolts. There's a cap on that, you just pop it out and get to the bolts. There's a cap on that too. Those were those 3. There's a few bolts down the side here, and you get a few more plastic ones down the side there too. And let's see how it goes putting it back in then. Okay, I just undid the wire, you know, on this. It's sort of held up in place inside the van like that, and that's where the bolts came from underneath. And to try and get underneath to do those, to try and get your arm underneath there to do those was really difficult. It took a bit, it's awkward. So that's that cluster of electrics. Putting it back in a while, so, you know, just gonna have to let it hang down there for a while. Obviously I'll have to look at putting it back up in a place where it's sort of like fitting for it just to go back up in place. So imagine it'd be sort of put like that for put it back in. Okay, it's got all those wires there. I'll just take all these little bits of wires off that I've got here. I'll get those loose first. Okay, took the wires off. That's the clock. I never bothered to take this off. Couldn't quite figure that one out at the time, so I still haven't figured it out. But the clock just there, you know, the clock's there like that, just leave it like that. This cluster of electrics here, I'll probably take those out and I'll just push them underneath here like this, you know, just get them out of the way. Or they've got to come out because I took these out to get this plastic off, and then I put it back in like this to drive. So I'll show you how that goes in a bit later, but you know, I sort of leave that there like that, and try and get the dashboard, you know, this clocking sort of into a place where it's sort of supposed to be. So it's sort of like that, you know. There's some of my own electrics here, so some of my own electrics there. and it's a little bit of wire here for some of my own electrics again here. I'll end up making this into like how can I say, a 2-hour feature. Like, it takes about 3 hours. It took me pretty much, you know, quite a while to sort it all out. All these cables here and there, they all have to be sort of get figured out to get put back into place a bit later. So I sort of like leave it all there and look at how I can do that a bit later. So you can see how I've got to put the plastic back in at this point. So to be honest with you, all these cables here, they got pulled out, so that's going to be a bit of a fuss. I'll push all those back in, and we'll, you know, there's 2 sides that go in afterwards as well, 2 sides over there. There's the brain over there for the van, the ECU. We'll have a look at dropping the steering column and then putting the plastic back in. I mean, I could have moved all this stuff out up here, you know, to make it easier for myself, but it's pretty simple to drop the steering column. Okay, it's just 4 bolts to undo here. I'm using a 13mm, so it's like a 13mm there. So you have to be careful for these electrics, apparently. You know, I did watch a few other videos regarding the Mark 6 excavation of the dashboard. So you'll see how it is now. I'll just crack these open. That should do that one. That should do that one. I say there's one on the other side, you know. I'm sure you'll know, and you know, it's exactly like a mirror of it the other side if you can't see on the cameras. So got the cameras linked up to my chest, you know, so you might not see everything here. It's just got cold here in England, you know, shit England. I'm not a fond fan of England myself, but you know, let's not mention shit England. So let's do this the other way. That's one. Do the same the other side. There's 2. Yeah. There's 2. Got that side off. 1, 2. The top one here as well. Okay. And the last one. This is where the steering column would drop on this one. So. Okay, so once you got the 4 bolts off, it sort of falls out, you know. That's enough just to leave it there. You know, you only need to drop it there. Be easy to put back in there, but that should give us enough space to get that sort of dashboard back in place at this point. So let's have a look at doing that. I'll have to put it on a tripod to do this. Okay. The actual dashboard themselves are quite sort of light. It's a bit of a custom piece on this one. A few of these plastics chopped out. Obviously the Mark 7 and the Mark 8 and the rest of them are all fairly similar, but you can see the roll bar there. Let's say they all link up, so I'm going to try and put this in as carefully as I can possibly do, you know. So as I say, it's one of those things that are sort of yanked out, and to get it back in could be a sort of a little bit of a struggle. So at this point I just noticed that I'd left one of these pipes on, but these just pop off, you know, like they just pop off, and you know, They go on the front there. You'll see which side they go back on anyhow. So I've got to move that out of the way. And there was one the other side as well, which is over there. So this would be the left side, and that. So I'll move that out of the way, and just thought I mentioned that. Okay, here goes. I say it's a bit of a problem with the camera here, but we'll see how we can start shifting it in. It's going to be a bit more of a struggle putting it back in than it was taking it out, I think. But, you know, I should have moved all this stuff out of the way, but I'm so lazy. So lazy about doing these things these days, you know, I just can't be bothered, you know, be able to take things apart all the time. It's kind of shit. And, got that through. You see what I'm trying to do now? Is it sort of, you know, these plastic pieces to put over the top of it. So these plastic pieces have got to go over the top. Obviously, you know, you're looking at breaking this sort of stuff. You can see the problem that I'm having with this. I'm putting this thing back in at the moment with the plastic bits. I've got that one over. And that one over. I mean, once I got these over, it's pretty much in really. I mean, once I got those two plastic pieces, you know, it's pretty much in there. You know, it's pretty much in. So you can see the struggle that I had with that outfit. I don't know if you saw the struggle that I had pushing that in. So that's pretty much, you know, back in place now. It'll wobble back into place, so you can wobble everything back into shape. Put everything back together now on that. So I'll put my camera back on now, and we can have a look at some of the details that are involved with bolting it back up, and that'll give you an idea of how it came out. But it, you know, it is a bit, you know, those plastic pipes that you saw in the first section, it was like that, getting them out and pushing those pipes back over that roll bar. Once you got the pipes back over the roll bar, it's pretty much in, you know, it's you know, you might want to put your steering column back in at this point. We'll see how I feel about that in a tick. One moment. Okay, got the camera back on my chest again. One of the first things I'm going to do from this is, you know, you got like the plastic pipes in there. So when the dashboard goes back in, you know, you need to sort of like what you're going to try and get through first and all that. So what I'm going to do on this first is I'm going to get all my cables through. Before I start bothering with that, I need to get all these wires through. Obviously there's an whole stack of wires here that I've got to get through for something. I don't know what they were down for. I should have looked at this a bit more before I got to this point. So, you know, I got a load of old shit wires here to do. So inside there, I'll try and get all those through, show you how I'm, you know, I'm struggling to get them through that holder. There's a hole just there. I'm trying to get a whole stack of cables through that holder. Okay, I got the dashboard on my knees. Found the connectors for the stereo. So sort of pushing these up through the aerial. I know all these came through. I know what these were for. I think they were just pushed up through. I say this is for my stereo, so it's, you know, I suppose it's a bit irrelevant really for what you're watching here for. I mean, the Mark 6 is dead, you know. The new era is with us, but some more cables over there. What those are for? It's very likely these were connectors for the stereo. I'm surprised I haven't got them marked up. It might have been for something else, I'm not too certain. But there's an old stack of cables here that seem a little bit, they're coming from the fronts of the board. Seem to be coming from the front of the van. I did mark everything up originally, so I don't know how these have got pushed in with that lot. They look like stereo blocks to me. There's some sort of stereo blocks for something that was here previously. So getting all these sort of wires that I put in originally, they're all curling up there into that. So, you know, there's an whole load of stuff that sort of, I don't know how far this went up, you know. I mean, it must have all been pushed up there. So, you know, these sort of things, yeah, these sort of wires, as I said, I'm not too sure what they were for. I just throw them there knowing what they're there. There might have been something there. So wires there, I seem to remember cutting those wires for something. Oh yeah, I've marked this one up. That was for the graphic equalizer. So I got some there for my graphic equalizer, and I got all those wires up for my graphic equalizer there. And I think that was nothing, that wire. So you see what I'm fussing around with the wires here, and you know, I'm fussing around with the wires. I'm sort of trying to put this sort of back into place now. So I get these, the heater things. So there's the heater thing, you know, the heater things they're going to go in. There's 4 screws that hold that in there. These sort of connectors, like, you know, there's an old stack of connectors for something else in there. So I got all these wires. I just put all these wires into something so I can see these, what these are for. There's some wires there that are perhaps underneath it or something like that. It's a little connection there. I'd imagine this connection's for something like, you know, that little wire there, which is part of the system that I've got coming in for this and that there. So obviously I had that coming up. You know, this wire here is coming up somewhere. So I don't know if it came up behind this or in front of this, but you know, I sort of want to try and you know, putting the dashboard back in there. That's sort of like that, and that's sort of like that, and those sort of these wires are like that. You can see the problem I'm having with the wires here. I'm trying to get to this connection just to get this on, but I'm sure I could get that on a bit later, so I'm going to leave that loose. So that's a sort of, you know, in there sort of thing. I mean, is it gone properly back yet? You know, I mean, is it sort of in, sort of like, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get these plastic hoses on. I'm fairly certain they go on the second piece, so I'll just quickly take the camera off there. See that, what I'm doing from the dashboard, that goes on that piece there. So I'm going to push that on, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, you see the plastic pieces where my hand is, it sort of wants to go, you know, it's got to be pushed. I have to use both hands to do this, so I'm going to take my hand off the camera and do that. Okay, yeah, I just got both hands to push that on there, as you can see, and the dashboard fits, you know, it's gone back in like a glove now. You can see it's, you know, it's all gone back in very compact, it's ready, it's gone back up tight there. You can see what I've done though. You notice what I've done down here? You see this drawer panel there, where I forgot to put the electric panel in. So I'm going to have to refix that and put that electric panel in. Well, you know, I put it back in place, and you know, you can sort of move it about a bit, and I should be able to pull that plastic thing back up like that there. Okay, so I've shunted it back out. That plastic piece is still good. Dashboard has gone back again, nice and neat, very close, you know, and I've got this electrical cluster to bolt back in. See about these, they seem to go underneath on top, so I'm going to try and do it on top on this one and just codge it up, so not fussy. But originally it was had to be bolted up from underneath. It was a right bugger to get off that, so I'm just going to pull this round on top like that and bolt it up like that, not fussy. Okay, at this point, while I'm doing the plastics, you know, I mean, it's not too important, but you know, you got your plastic pipes that go on inside there, you know, you never know. So I might just put this plastic pipe on, you know, so I'll just put the plastic pipe through. Pity you can't see what I'm doing from my eyes, you know, but you know, the plastic pipe there. You know, you have to get awkward to get the plastic pipes on. It's a bit fussy with this camera being here. Put that on. So you can see, like, you know, push the plastic pipe back on there. That's how they go. The plastic pipes on that, plastic pipes on that, and plastic pipes on down there. So there's a plastic pipe there for that. So it's looking good this side. We've got all the electric cluster to be bolted back on there, so that's ready to be bolted back on. That's all good, and we can get at the other things like the buzzer. All the cables are accessible through there. Everything seems to be sort of in place here, ready to go. So we'll go over the other side now and see what's going on the other side with the clock. There's a possibility everything's been out of focus, you know. I'll say it's, you know, doing shit work like this, you know what pile of shit it is, don't you? I mean, you know, you get your hands batched up and all cut, shunting around and batching things into place. You got to have fucking hooves as hands, you know what I mean? But doing the camera work as well here, you know, I wasn't even going to film this. I just thought I'd just film it, man, because all this important stuff that people sort of might be really interested in, I never get to film, you know, because it's too heavy shit to get this done right, you know. So there's the clock. So there's a clock ready to go back in there, but you can see while the clock's moved out the way there's the plastic hose just there. So I've got to sort of batch my hands up, and you're getting all your cuts. When you're doing this, you're having to do shit like, and it's a right pile of crap. Here's the electric cluster for that, so you know, I will have to take the wires off of that and put them back through there somewhere. I'll show you that. But at this point, I'm gonna get this other hose on at this point, so I can get my arm through while the clock's out and that. These are some of the first things I got out, so I've got to put that other arm on this side as well. So I don't know if to put the steering column back on at this point. So I'm saying to myself at this point, you know, put the steering column back on, man, get it out of the way, because I don't want nothing going wrong with the steering column, having to get it in place. So I should still be able to get in there, so I'm going to put the steering column back on at this point. Now I've got the I sort of got the dashboard into place a bit, you know. So we've got the, so we shunted that back on there. So I'm going to put the yeah, I should still be able to get to that. I put a nut on this now, get these nuts on. These little ratchet things come in quite handy for this sort of stuff, so I'll quickly bolt that up. I don't know if that's done on that one. Do this side as well. You can see how this is where your hands get all shitty, man. and doing all this shit. Okay, so that seems, you know, it's sort of in place, that steering column now. I'll put the other bolts on the other side as well. I was looking at the dropping the steering column to get the dashboard out. I thought, oh man, I don't want to drop the steering column. It's not too bad. Seems to hang in there by itself. You know, it's not too bad. You know, once you've got it loose, it drops down. It just seems to hang there loose on its stems and that just there. But I didn't want to sort of like take a chance with it too much, not knowing about it. So these 4 bolts shouldn't do that. Okay, so the steering column's back in place. Obviously I'll have to tighten that up now. So I mean, it's actually worked out better because you can see now I've got the steering column back in place, so I haven't got to fuss around with this. So now I should be able to get this piece on underneath here. As you can see, I believe this goes onto the back piece. So you know, this is where I'm chipping my hands. I can feel it all chipping and that now. So, you know, these cables are going to go. I'm going to make sure these cables are right here. You know, I don't know what the point of having this camera is here, do you really? Just looking at nothing. But you know, I'm trying to get these plastic pipes on the right pipes here. I'm looking at those cables to make sure the cables are all right. So these cables might have come around the other way and they might not have, but it seems like that's where they were. So what I've got to do now is I've got to try and, I mean, it's all pretty much back there, but I'm fairly certain, you know, with all these little cables that I've got here, all these little cables and things that I've got here, you know, I'm working with this shit camera, man. You know, I want to get this camera out of the way because I'm going to have to switch off here because it's important that I do this right. So I'm going to be sort of trying to get these cables out of the way, and I'm going to put these plastic box on. Okay, I said, like, you know, I put this clock back in place, so I've pushed this clock back in place. But once I got that little cable round that was one of my own cables, which was this piece here, so I got that out of the way of the pipes there, and you know, the board is pretty much, you know, it's pretty much solid now. That the dashboard's back in there, man. It's just getting really easy from now on. You know, all the pipes, that pipe's connected, that pipe's connected. But you know, you got to just look at coming in reverse order for this sort of stuff. So you know, all those cables over there. But getting this side of the dash on, you know, getting the main workings of it back together is the main thing. And one pipe to go in now still. So it's a bit pointless really taking my clock out there, but you know, to fiddle it around like that. But you can see the pipe there now, hopefully. So underneath, I don't know if you can see anything from underneath there, but there's another pipe just there, which is that section just there where my hand is. So let's see if I get this pipe in now. But I know these go in like that because that side is that side. So let's get this pushed up there. Hopefully there's not a problem with doing this. Hopefully there's not a problem with doing this because it's all been, you know, it's gone up, it's running really well at this point. So it's shit. You know, hopefully there's not a problem with doing this. But yeah, there we go. Got a problem with doing this. But you know, these pipes are fiddly, man, and working with my camera here, it ain't happening, you know. So yeah, you can see the problem that I'm having with my pipes here, and I can't work with my camera on here, right? So I'm just trying to fiddle all this pipe Okay, so you're going to have to see what I'm doing, how I get this, you know. I'll tell you if I got it on, but I've got to go try and get that pipe connected to there, right? Okay, yeah, we got the pipe on there, and it's on underneath as well. You know, there's all the pipes are there as well. Make sure, yeah, all the pipes are good. It's all gone in. So there's a little bit of a knack to it. He sort of like pulled it up here, and then it clipped round, and then it was able to get it in. I bring the clock around at this point. Hopefully this clock's still all right. So the clock has to come through like that, and it's all ready to bolt into places there. But I never had to connect the cables, but you can see my hands at this point. I'm going to go and try and get a bit of a wash at this point because it's filthy shit. But you know, it's mainly, you know, it's come together a lot together now. So all the pipes are connected, all the electrics are sort of routed, ready to be bolted in. You know, I had to perhaps just quickly film this shit before I go and wash my hands. But this like goes in there. So you've got these connectors at the back. So you know, it was fiddly to do this because I had to take it apart and put it back together because I wanted to do the driving. So you know, to do this again, you know, holding the camera's a right pile of shit for me, you know. I know that comes out with a screwdriver. So these pot connectors, to do this I'm going to have to go and get another little tool, so I'll be back with you in a short while. Okay, I know that one's pretty easy. This one is straightforward. This one, it just like comes out, so I just put that back in there for a moment. How it was, how was it? You know, how they go, I don't know how they go, but they were in there some way. This way, that way. Must be in the other way. But there it was. It was obviously in like that a little bit, so there's that one. That was for nothing, that one, by the way. There's nothing in there, so whatever that was, they're just there for nothing. But this one, obviously got the clip broke off it somewhere, but to get this one out, which controls the mirrors, I had to push this in here. Pull that out, so that controls the mirrors just there. And then you've got like this one for the all the light clusters and that, so that just pulls out like so. There we go. Okay, so once we got that stuff out, you know that they go back in like that. So that's going to go back in. You can see what I'm doing, surely. I think I might have made things awkward for myself at this point. Have I don't know why I did that, but I've obviously put a bolt back in there for some reason. Whatever that was holding, you can see that I put a bolt back in there for some reason. But I'm just put this back in here now, ready in place, so that goes back on there. And while I'm at this point, you know, I can see that I've got my cables coming through, so I know that's going through there and that's going through there. So I'm going to run these cables through now, so that they'll be coming through here to connect up, and this top piece should be coming through there to connect up. I might have wanted to push it over the top of the bar on that, sort of give it that weight, you know, so it hold the wires all up there, so that's all good for that. All those little cables here for nothing, no doubt. There's a lot of electrics that are all just here for no particular reason on this truck. So what I'm going to do now is connect these wires back in. I mean, I don't know why I'm bothered connecting that into a plastic, because there's nothing there in here. But here we go. So we put the light back in. There's the light done. That just goes back into nothing. Let's put it that way. just out in there, and for the electric signals. And that's that cluster of electrics all sorted. So I got my own little collection of electrics here, which nothing to do with the van at all, it's just something I put there. But so all the electrics this side now, the lights are done, the clock is back in, all the pipes are done. I mean, you know, I made sure the pipes are okay. So we go over to the left side now. Okay, so we're back in the middle of the buzz, just came over from the clocks there. They're just sort of getting ready to, you know, I put my own cables back up here. I'm sort of messing around with the cables to get them in place, ready for their plastics, you know. I'm just moving them like that. Oh, there's the hazard light, or whatever that is, brake, anti-brakes. But I've got a photograph for how these originally went in, but there's like a more plastic shrouds and that to go in. So I've got all these cables routed quite regular. I should be able to put this cable in at the moment by seeing how it is without going underneath. So, you know, I can like bring that through like so, and say okay. Yeah, so I'll just plug that in. It's just a matter of connecting all the electrics back up now, for bits and bobs. So there's a little, that's done, and there's one over that side as well for, you know, you just get your little connections back up. And this is the sort of stuff that you had to take apart to get it out. So all the stuff that I'm reconnecting at this moment is what I had to do to get it out. You know, I know there's one just here as well, so I don't know what I did with that cable. There's possibly that one, which I believe it is. I should have perhaps tried to do that one before, because you can't really see what's happening on that. But I'm fairly certain. I'm going to have to switch the camera off at this point, but I can see the shape of that, and I can feel the shape of that underneath there, and I've just got to slot that in at this point. So I'm going to have to take the cable off, shut down on this. But, you know, it's connecting all the pieces back up that you have to take off, and if you've got that, it needs to be taken off too. Okay, so you can still see the things, so I have to take this off at this point. Yeah, so you know, that's where the cable went just there. Got that back on, which was for this one underneath there. So that's connected up there. This is ready to bolt back up in here now, this side. But this was a bit fiddly, this one. There's like a little bump plastic at the bottom there. See, like that little bump plastic piece there goes into a hole underneath. So that goes up, and I think it'll stop it from, you know, I'm going to have to leave that out on this one, because I want to bolt it up from the top on this. I don't want to be fussing around with the awkward problems of screwing it up like that, you know. Just so you bolt this back up how you want. If you're fussy about the bottom piece, you know, you can put it back in how it was. Okay, these are all the bits that came off from that point. So, you know, got that to go back on there. Two side pieces, all these little pieces, you know, all these little pieces, all this dashboard piece there, all these little pieces, these pipes, all these little things here. So you got all these little things to go back on. All these are the pieces that you had to take off to put back on. To be honest with you, I'm not familiar where that came from or how important that metal piece was. Whatever that was all about. So all these little pipes, and what I'm trying to find out here is get to the bolts. So there's a load of little bolts in here in these stereo units. So just grab a couple of these bolts for that. Fairly certain it's these types. So they all seem to be the standard size. So let's have a look at bolting a few things together at this point. So, you know, to sort of start to put it back into its place and that. So with this, as I said, it should have been bolted from underneath it, but I can't be bothered to put it underneath because it was too difficult to undo. You know, so I'm going to try tightening it up from this side and doing it this way instead, if I can. And while I'm working with this camera, I can't seem to get anything right with this camera. I don't know why. I'm working with this camera, I don't think I can even, anything's being filmed on it. But, you know, get a bolt in there. Get a bolt in there. Yeah, managed to get one bolt in there, so you get the other one in, just so it's held in place, you know. I'm not too fussed about it going back the proper way, which was supposed to be underneath, but as I said, you can see the problem that I might have had with trying to unscrew it up the other way. So this is why I'm putting it on this way, because I can't be bothered to try and screw it up from the other side. You can see that the space that's involved with trying to get my arm around the other side to do that, and that's how awkward that was to take off. But I was able to get my arm underneath, lying all over the floor, and I was able to sort of get that done. So, you know, I've got this little cluster of electronics put back in place there. You know, it's still the same. You know, it's just should have been bolted up underneath, and with it being bolted up underneath, I'll probably be able to show you. There was like a clip underneath there. There's like a plastic hole, and it sort of kept it wobbling about, like, you know, it sort of kept it in place, right? If you're really fussy, you know, if you're really fussy, it has gone back in properly. But that's gone in properly. The little hole that's there, it's actually gone in properly. So, you know, that's all gone back properly there. There's like a little hole, it popped out, and if you can see my hand going down there, there's a little hole. So that's actually gone in properly there, and it's all still nice. What I'm going to try and do next, at this point, it's all coming back together. You can see how it's all being bolted. And all this stuff that I'm doing now, this is the stuff you have to take apart to get it out. So I'm going to put these bolts back in now, the top 3 bolts. I'm going to get the dashboard bolted back to the frame now, so it's, you know, I mean, maybe I should be, you know, you know, you might need to shunt it out a bit, but, you know, it's pretty much going back in now. Once you start bolting this stuff back in, it's sort of making it all sort of sturdy, you know, with the whole lot of it. So, and put the top bolts in next. Still working with all these bits here. And I know these were these 8mm ones, so I've got to get a different spanner, but that's looks like an 8mm to me. So these were the 3 8mm that came out of that top section. Okay, yeah, so let's have a look at, we do the middle one first, shall we? So, say it's all awkward stuff, you know, so I move all those wires out of the way to do this, so hopefully it should all be lined up all right. So 3 of those, just drop them there for now. So it's really awkward with the cameras, so you have to sort of like have this camera strapped to my chest, and I don't think it's like in a real position to be able to film right, but you know, I'll have to see what I get from it. But that seems to have gone through there. Let's see if we can get me. The camera always seems to be out of the picture, right? But you just to get to tighten those things in. you know, hopefully. And there's one down here as well. We see how easy this one goes in. And they seem quite tight, you know. No, just they seem a bit. So get the ratchet in and see how we go on this one and that one and that one. Tighten up. Yep. Here we go. Tightening up now. Make sure we're on the right. Yeah, I know what's wrong, but you know what I mean, tightening nuts and bolts in. You know, I shouldn't have to film tightening nuts and bolts up, but if you haven't got the spanner, you know, I'm like going in with my hand tight, you know, so watch your screen with your spanners. Okay, so you get to tighten these up by hand. So there's a little bit, the machine, I don't know if it's the machine, doesn't have the torque. As I said, you've got to be careful about smashing the windscreen with these sort of things. You don't want to make a little, tightening a few bolts up and having to change a windscreen. Okay, that feels good, that feels quite tight. You know, I putting the board back in, you know, I mean, that's solid now, man. You don't have to get fussy about putting half the bolts back in, you know what I mean? But if you want to put all the bolts back in because, you know, you're fussy about things like that, you know, you wouldn't have to put all the bolts back in. I mean, that's solid now. That's sort of like getting very close. So I've got one on the other side to put in. Let's quickly race over there. Yeah, so just the other side now. One last one to put in just over there. So just take this ratchet off to guide it in. I'm surprised I bothered with the camera because getting this van back together for me was more important than the camera, so try this ratchet a little bit with it, see if you get into it. Sort of partially there. And I'll just finish the last bit off with this. And this is all the stuff, don't forget. This is the reverse of it all. I didn't bother to film taking it out because, you know, it was urgent. I get this heater swapped, but this is, you have to go through all this just to swap a heater. Just to get to the heater, you have to rip all this apart. You know, at this point, I'm going to make sure the heater's working at this point. So, you know, it's pretty much back in that dashboard now. Now, once you've got those 3 bolts in at the top there, that dashboard is in, you know. The rest of it is just all these little things down the side, you know, just these little things down the side, and the little things, all the bits I got over there to put in there, all this front bit section. But the dashboard is in now, and the clock can be put back in properly and tightened up all properly for, if you can remember how to put it back in after you've taken it out, that is. All this stuff can be put back in. So I'll show you how all this stuff gets put back in, because I could have made a mistake on this section. Which I might have to take it all back out. I'm okay with that still. Yeah, I might be okay with that, but I best check this straight away, these bits. You see the plastic pipes in over there? on that section, I just noticed that I took this one out for some reason. Okay, so I best go and check I can get that in. I think I can. I seem to remember I can. So let's take a stroll. We go on an expedition round the path. Okay, so racing over here to my component boxes. And this is the section that I was looking for. But I took this one out earlier on, so got this piece to go back in. Hopefully, it looks like it's just going to go straight back in anyhow, so. And I was hoping that it'd go straight through here, which it looks like it has. But, you know, to be honest with you, you would have been wiser making sure this was in to start with like that. You can get your hand underneath. It's not much for them to go in, really. You know, you're only going a little bit of a way. So they only go up to that point goes into there, and you can see that there's like a little latch for them to pop into, pop in and pop out. So, you know, that's popped in, I'd say. You can see that's popped in like when it goes like that, you know, so might have popped in a bit too much because of that. But, you know, you've got to make sure they popped in for how they're supposed to be popped in. You know, you pop these things in there, and these are little things you're going to have to fix, little things like that. So, I mean, you know, they still move the clocks out of the way to do things like this. So, taking the stuff out was quite easy, you know. There we go. You can see how they pop back in, and then you get to, you know, like that. But, you know, I've got to take it all apart again, you know, so how they pop back in and there. What do you mean? So I think that's how this one got took out originally. Because, you know, actually that was okay. The cables were connected, so, you know, that is back in really, you know, on that one. So, problem is that I've just took it out the plastic box at the back, like, you know. So I'm going to turn this into an half an hour thing, you know what I mean? So just move out that way, and you can get your hand underneath. I don't want to turn this into an half hour thing, but you can see the problems that you have when you're putting these things back together. They pop in, and then once you got them popped in, you know, that's what you're going to have to look at in a bit to get it tidied up like I just did. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure the heater's working. Okay, so I'll fix that side as well. Another plastic part out of the box. Yeah, I think this actually broke on this one originally. It took it in for an MOT the one year and came back more broken than it went in with. But, you know, that'll be going back on there eventually some way. You know, I don't want to spend like hours filming this stuff, like, for the sake of putting it there. So there it is. So I'm going to try the heater now, because that's what I had to replace all this for, and it all had to come out like this just to swap that heater over. Okay, let's start the engine up. Oh, there's the fan going straight away. So here's starts fan. Oh yes, look at that heating. I'm just going to turn the engine on though to make sure, you know. But yeah, I had to rebuild this engine. I wish I would have refilmed rebuilding the engine. It took me 3 months to do it. But I had to yank it off the gearbox, I had to pull the whole front end apart. I say, you're lucky you don't ever have to buy a Ford Transit Mark 6, a TDCI, because they were a right pile of shit. Nothing but problems anyhow. But let's go with the fan, man. Let's see how we got. Have we got everything working right? Okay, I'm full. You know, I mean, you got the connection. Maybe that's how it was. I just felt, you know, there was air coming out here, but you know, it seemed to be coming out here a lot. But I know you can shut these off and make it go back that way a little bit more. So, you know, you got these 3 settings. You got that there, and you can see how it moves. You can see how it moves just there. So you got that setting, and that setting. And when I come down here, you can see there, hopefully, see it moving. Got this cable there, so it shunts it to there, so that's all good. And when I move it to there, see, it's all good. So from A to B, it's on the ratchet and it's moving into the right positions, so that's got to be right. I thought I never damaged that, so that's all good. That's the fan works, you know. Obviously when I put these bits in, it's gonna force it back more up this way, because it looks like all the air was coming out here, but when I close these vents off, it's going to push it back that way more. Okay, so next thing, there's a little pipe, you know, you have to take little pipes off here. So I'll show you how to put the pipes back on here, which they go through to this section here. So, you know, you have to take all these bits off. And take all these bits off just to be able to take the things out. That'd be this plastic pipe here, so I'm going to go and get that plastic pipe on now. Well, the components in the box are getting a bit less, you know, so let's go and put this pipe on next. But I was a little bit concerned there about putting the heater on, because there didn't seem that much coming out of that. But perhaps it's because it's all not connected, and all these are open, so it's all going through. But you can see the mechanism is functioning correctly. So, oh, the mechanism was functioning correctly there, so everything was obviously okay on that. And to put these pipes back in, there's electric cables. There's electric cables that go behind all this stuff. They can fall loose. So you need to try and get your cables still placed. All these little pipes, they just get connected on. Can you see that? They just get pushed on and pushed into place. So that cable's on now. I'm getting the left side done now. It's coming back together well. There's a little pipe here. Might need twisting around into place some way. So we'll get this connection on next and find a piece for that over to here. Hopefully don't have to spend all day looking for it. There's that piece. That's the ashtray. But there it is. So, you know, I don't get too fussy about things. So, this get pushed back on here now, like so. See what I'm doing? So that's gone back on now. Then you get to, you know, if they're all good and that, put them into the places. Obviously they go that way. There's a way for these to actually go, and then twist them is it? All my facial stuff's all peeling off. Spent a lot of time putting that stuff on. That's you know, you can get the idea what I'm doing on this. I'm going to just show you what that looks like once I've fussed around with it together, because I don't want to spend half an hour on my cameras showing you this. Okay, bit of fiddling this way and that way, and turning it this way and turning it that way, making sure it popped on from the other side. While I was doing that, I noticed that we got one of these popped out. I imagine one of those popped out there, some sort of clip. It looks like some sort of clip to hold the plastics in up here, so I'll try and put this back in. There we go. That seemed to go straight back into place. Now that's popped out again. That's what I was sort of fussing about, really. You know, sort of fussing about that. I don't know why. It's just a little cosmetic thing, that. I'll go and have a look at the other side, see how it should have been the other side. But you know, this stuff you just got to pop out and take off, and you can see that this side's been twisted round a bit more and it's looking like that way, so you know, they probably twist round once they're in. Yeah, they probably twist round a little bit once they're in. And I just work on it a little bit more just to see, like, you know. But I can't seem to twist it round, I don't know why. Yeah, I just popped it in and that seems how it's... I'm having to push the plastic pipe on it from the other side. So, maybe it's sort of just got worn or something like that on the plastics. You know, I thought it's not going to move. So it once it's in, it's in. So have it that way. You can have it that way. So probably go with it that way. It's got that part snapped in there, but when I push the plastic pipe on, you know, that plastic pipe from the other side, you know, the plastic pipe. Yeah, down there. So, you know, the plastic pipe that fit, pushing it on the other side here. There we go. And the cable's there. Okay, when I push the plastic pipe on, it pushes it out a bit, you know, nothing to do. What I'm going to try and do next is I'm going to try and put these columns on. Push the columns on next. So let's have a look at the columns. I'm not too sure which side is which side. So obviously that was the right side and this was the left side, so we'll have a look at putting the these plastic pieces on next, because these have to come off as well to get to the nuts and bolts. You know, I'm not too sure at this point, but so that piece goes in there, there's a piece there, sort of thing, for when you get to there. Is that as sort of broke there to some way. I'm not too sure how that sort of got clipped in, but it looks like that's some it's broken for me there. So I'll have to look at that in a short while. So I'll put this clip out of the way. I look at that in a bit. We'll see how it is at the end, but this is the piece that you want to fit in now. Try and get this out of there. So it all looks the cosmetic aspects of the vehicle, you know. There's all sorts of cables and bits and bobs here that are all tied up in this. So this is how this came out. I remember yanking it out some way. It's sort of like it's like it pops into clips. There's a clip there that it goes back into. It goes back in there. But you know, these pieces here, how they go in, looks like they go in behind those somewhere. Not too sure, but I'm gonna try and get one of these in. Let's try and get this done right. So that's sort of gone there, and there we are. There we go. Snap, 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 snap. Snap in, snap out. So that's all snapped in. Snap in, snap out. So that went nice. And it's all still good and close up here, is it? Yeah, it's all close, solid, close, nice, neat, solid. Well, let's hope the other side goes in as nice as that. We go and get the other piece. Back over to the collection of bits. As I say, all this stuff has to be snapped out and pulled out before you can get to the bolts to pull it all out. So I don't think there was anything to bolt up underneath this. As I said, it doesn't really matter at this point because it's all rather solid anyhow, you know. It's all rather solid, but there doesn't appear to be nothing you can, you know, it's just those side bolts there. I believe I might have made a mistake on something deep into it. I might have made a mistake on something deep into it. No. I've seemed to have possibly made a mistake deep into it. I'm not going to stop the camera here because you know, these bits came out and they got to go back in, but there's a possibility. I'm not going to take it apart at this point. You know, how I've got that back together is just going to stay like that. But there were these parts. There was this part here. You see this part, these pieces of rubber. You got this piece of rubber and you got this piece, and I remember snapping them out for something. These were snapped out for something. You see that where they were? You see that how they were underneath there? Oh no, yeah. So you can see I forgot to put these rubber pieces in, but I think it was over the top. Okay, so once you've got all the bolts on this, these go over the top and it cover all the bolts up there. You have to rip those out to see the bolts. So I'm okay on that. So you put all the bolts in, these go in afterwards, those two sections. You have to rip those pieces off to be able to see the bolts. But I got worried there for a bit, oh no man. But I wasn't going to take it apart. It's like this. I don't know what this came out from or what this was for, but it's not obviously some sort of sturdy reinforcements for something, but you know, I forgot where that came from. So it's all good, everything's good. So I thought I made a mistake on that, taking it that far into it. Let's hopefully snap in place okay as well. So you got your cables, got that piece, and you just sort of like put them in, and sort of like get to the point where you, there we go, and snap. Oops, this one didn't go very well, so this one's not going in, is this? There we go, we got it, is it done? Lost the snap on it though. There we go, got the snap. I mean, sort of, you know, to be honest with you, I think I could do that a bit better. So you got to be careful about snapping them in and out, snapping them out, because the more you snap them in and snap them out, the more you're going to break the plastics like I've just done. You get to a point where, you know, you got to look at the cosmetic side of it. You know, it was just slightly out down there, what I saw of it, but you know what I mean, it's just slightly out, it's not in. God damn it. It's fussy shit, like, you know, put that back over there later, twist that over there a bit. It looks like it was out anyhow, you know, to be honest with you. See, I broke it all off now. There's nothing to snap to now. You see, I've taken the yellow plastics off that was in there. I don't know if I can find that on the floor. But these yellow plastic pieces, you take these things apart, you break them, and you know, that's how it should be. Oh, that one's a plastic piece in there. There's a plastic piece in there too. So they get snapping there, but it's getting that one snapped in. Once you take these things apart, you can see, you know, you're getting the problems. They don't always go back in nice. I mean, I'm right fussy about that. I don't know why I'm trying to be so fussy about that, but I just want those two pieces to go in, and I think it might have been like it before, as I can't get it to go back in. Every time I bring it in here, it doesn't want to seem to go in there. So I'm just gonna you know, go with that, and hopefully can get it snapped in on these. For a pile of shit, eh? But this side I've had a problem with. You know, you can see that I've had a problem with this side. I think they go down and then come back up. You push it down. I'm just going to put it in, you know. I tried one last time with this. I tried last one time just to push it right out. I'm spending half an hour on this shit. It just keeps on going back. Just keeps on going back to how it wants to go there. It doesn't want to go. I mean, I could have perhaps got this done before I put the dashboard in, you know. So as I was putting the dashboard in at the point, I could have left these sort of in at that point. So while it was loose, before I bolted it up, before I went this far, it might have been a good idea to, you know, I know I had to pull these out to start with, but if I would have done this before I put this back together, I don't think I would have had this problem. So that's going to keep on happening to me, and you know, for what it is there, you know what I mean, a little bit fussy about the gap there, you know what I mean, for what the van is and all that. I mean, if you go and look at the other side, that's snapped in. But as I said, if I would have got that one side there, what I was trying to get into that lap, it wouldn't go in. So that's pushed over the side and it's caused that gap there. But it's nothing, you don't see it unless you're right over here. You know, you'd have to come and look at it and go, oh yeah. So that gap is not really a problem. And if you look at how it is over here, okay, you can see this one's nice and straight. So you got nice and straight there, but that snapped in, that's good. I ain't gonna fuss about that for what it is, but you know, if you're gonna put one of these dashboards in and out, just as you're putting them back in, I mean, you can see from outside, no big deal, man, no big deal. No big deal, it's just a piece of plastic that's out of place in there that's caused a little bit of a pushback there. And even if it would have locked inside, it wouldn't, you know. So that's all snapped in good, so you might want to put these, just rest these in before you start locking it down. But when you're taking it out, you know, these things pop off and you get them out that way. Okay, that's a bit of a few minutes on that one. Okay, next, we've still got a lot of pieces to do here. But what I'm going to do next is have a look at this central piece with the heater bits. As you can see, those ducts here, they do shut off. Once you shut those ducts off, you know, so if you use the control on here, you can see how they open and close. So if you leave those open, when you close these off and you close those off, it's going to force the heat back up more this way. So what we're going to do next is put this central thing back in and see how this goes. But before we do that, we just make sure, before we do this, we might have a look at putting some bolts down the side and putting some bolts in before we do this. So I'll just drop this here for now. Maybe not. Just go with it, eh? This is just the central piece on the top here. I don't think there's much bolts to put here, really. I mean, to be honest with you, you know, there's something, obviously, there's a bolt there. There's a bolt there. So, I mean, when we put this in, you can see it covers the bolt. So, you know, there's bolts there and bolts there for this and that. So, there's a bolt there that secures that. 2 bolts on this section here. So I must have had to undo those. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to put these 2 bolts in, and that bolt and that bolt and that bolt there is for that. Okay, so look at doing the bolts. Okay, back with a couple of bolts from the bucket bin over there. Okay. They say once the heaters go in these, you know, you drive along and all the mist gets on the window, it's shit cold while you're driving along. You know how shit cold it is in this country. If you've got no heating, man, are you damned alright? If you've got no heating in this country, you damned alright, boy. And I tell you that. So it's most important that you keep your heaters running in these vehicles. I mean, you know, the mist and the cold, having to drive along in the cold, and it's horrible, man. So that's that bolt done. These had to come out. Obviously this is the reverse process of it all. So I was going to try and keep track of my bolts at one point, like I'll keep the bolts in and I'll be able to remember where they all go, like, you know. And that's how these ones got put in. But I'm not too sure which way they're coming out, you see, at this point. So I know those two bolts go in there, so I'll just put these there for now. And we look at how this goes back in at this point. So you can see that those are the sections 1, 2 and 3. I believe hazard lights were up on the top, so there's a hazard light there, so I believe we've got to pull this hazard light through. You know, once you get involved with this, all this sort of stuff, this is the stuff you got to go through to get it back together, and to pull it out, obviously, you know. So I put that through there, got those through there. There's 3 of those. I took a photograph of how it should be on my phone, so I'm going to put it back how it was, but I can't remember until I go and look at a photograph on my phone. So I'm going to go and look at a photograph on my phone to see how that how they were. Okay, just check my gallery. Is this the one here? Well, you can see from my photograph that it looks like the brown was on the right, the green was there, and the grey was there. Okay, so however that was, from that's how I took the photograph. That's how I took the photograph, and so it's brown, green and grey. Brown, green and grey, okay. Brown, green and grey. Okay, that's those snapped back in. That's all my parametric cables for this and that, obviously, you know, my stereo, and that's for the, let's just see if it just goes back in at this point, so have a look how it's sort of going. It's got to pull this one out as well for the hazard lights. This is the hazard lights, isn't it? There we go. Hazard lights. Okay, so sort of drop this back into place at this point, can we? And you know, this is just got cut off there, so these boxes, so I have to pull that back out of the way. See, that was in the way there, if you pull that out, so it's probably going to interfere with the operation that I would have thought, you know, sort of push it there, but that's close on that. So there are those boxes. So we have to get these boxes back on here now by putting my hand through over here. Sorry about the camera, you know, it's been really difficult to film this. It's been really difficult to film all this with this going on. Like, it might have been a good idea to try and, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this on, like, being able to do it like this with this, because the way this came off. There we go. Go on the inside. Go on the inside. So that's all gone back nice there. So you can see how that's all gone back nice there, and that's ready for that bolt there. And these are all in place. All the cables are still okay here, are they? Coming through. Still got all those cables there. Everything's back good here. It's ready for the bolt there, and ready for the bolt there, and the bolt there. So everything seems to be good. I'm not too sure. I should have had some bolts in place for that, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to, you know, check that. I don't think I did. Yes, there was. No, yes, there was a couple of bolts there. So a little bit, done this a little bit wrong, like, you know. So I'm going to have to take the hazard light apart again, just so I can drop it. But it looks like there was some bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts there for that. So I'm going to look at getting some bolts back in that. I wasn't too sure which bolts came out of these, but I found these little ones here. They seem to be going in okay, you know, with the depth of those, but it looks like these were the ones actually. There must have been this. I could only find 4 of them, and they seem to be doing the doing this nice, so they must be the right ones. But I didn't keep a track of the bolts, where what bolts came out what, but they seem to pretty much a standard size apart from this sort of thing. But all these seem to be matching okay. So this is the bolts that I had to take out to release this from the case. Yeah, so you know, this is how what you got to do going backwards, you know. So if you're taking the dashboard out, these are the things you got to undo. But as I didn't film it taking it apart, yeah, so I didn't film it taking it apart, so okay, let's try again with the hazards. Yep, okay. They go on the inside. Just push on the inside, nice and easy. Yeah, nice and easy. Okay, so we're ready to put that back in now. At one point, there's a couple of bolts to go in there. They're the standard sizes. There's a little bolt underneath, 2 bolts under there, so that's pretty much ready to bolt back in, I would say. You know, as long as you're happy with the ashtrays ready to go back in, and everything seems to be going well. Stereos and all that, so you know the stereos go up here. I've got a lot of stuff back up here. These 2 bolts came over there, so I can start putting these ones back in straight away. So oops. So let's start to get it back in together then. So I'm going to put this one in first. Okay, this one. And this one came out of there. I'd say it was particular at first. I try and keep these bolts, screw them straight back in the place where I take them out from, but then I realised there was nowhere to put them back into at certain points. So it's just a few bolts that were in their original places, like these two. So let's got those two in place. There's another one there to go in, and there's another two down here to go in. One. That's it, yes. Another two down here. Hopefully they'll be able to get them in, but there's one there and one there. So we get some more bolts for that and tighten those in while we're here. That one's underneath. Whew. Not too sure about these. They go in. Seems to have gone in okay. Tight, good. Yeah, that one's gone in. And the one over this side, is that going to go in just as easy as well? Got a hold there. Let's see. Okay, got that one in. And the one just here. Got that one in, so it's all starting to get a bit sturdy and ready to wire up for the stereo and all that back, and that's pretty much the central done. That's all for parametric equalizer and that. So I mean, the fan should be working a bit better now at this point. As far as I know, all the pipes are properly connected now on the heaters, so we should be able to check the heater and make sure I got some good heat coming out of that one. Okay, I just turn it on quickly. But yeah, they definitely got, yeah, that's working much better now. If I open these up, it's sort of down half power on that, but it's coming through here. So yeah, we got heat. The fan's working good. We got heat. Okay, that's good. Okay, still putting it back together in reverse, coming to the sort of these bolts over here. So obviously these were covered, so let's get these two bolts in. And the screws, nuts or bolts, never looked into it. I was just called them bolts, but hopefully these are the proper ones for that. Is that it? I never thought it was so loose before, but before you start like bolting it back in, make sure it's all snapped in. See, like it's not properly snapped in for me at this point, so I'm gonna have to undo that and make sure all these are snapped in properly. Bit of an inconvenience having to do this, but it's sort of like the clock. I haven't put the clock back in or anything, so I can still look at getting that snapped in from this side. So you know, that's good. So I've got that done, so that's ready to screw back in properly now. That feels a lot better now that's snapped in as well. All these screws will seem to be standardized sort of size, so there's that one in. Yeah, that feels much better. So that's that good, that's that good. Okay. So, I mean, you might want to check things like as you're putting it back together, you know, like at this point, to make sure at this point everything seems to be working okay. So I'm just going to check I'm just going to check the mirrors at this point to make sure the mirrors are working okay. So yeah, that's good. And that one over there, yeah, so both my mirrors are working okay. You know, you might want to check your lights and all your switches are working good as well at this point. Make sure everything's good. You know, okay, so I'll just skip that. Any other bolts? So it looks like there was a bolt there, which was a major bolt for there, so I'm going to put a bolt in there, whatever that one was. Okay, yeah, so we got the one bolt there. Looks like the one bolt there, so I'm just going to bolt that back in, if it was a bolt. There we go. That's behind whatever that was, so that's all been put back in good for that. So we do the ashtray next. We got a bolt there and a bolt there, so the ashtray goes back in like so. Okay, so we got the ashtray, so we get a couple of bolts for the ashtray. Oh, it's not an ashtray, it's a can of pop holder. So a couple of bolts for the can of pop holder. And it's still got quite a few bolts. We obviously miss a few bolts, you know. Let's grab a few of these for the can of pop holder. So I drink a lot of pop and driving down the road, so the can of pop holder is quite important for me. So yeah, you know, every nut and bolt, every nut and bolt sort of thing. I don't think there's many bolts that I've missed out, you know, because he had to go back in. You saw the state of this. I'll probably put it up online as a slow playing thing. Okay, so that all seems to have I've done something wrong there. Now have a look what I've done wrong there. It seems a bit, unless it was like that to start with, I felt like it should have some sort of stabilisation, you know, from the bottom section. Oh yes, it does. Clips underneath, so you've got these two metal clips underneath there. So you make sure you clip these from underneath and then put it up. Okay. Okay, oh that feels a bit better. Looks more stable now that. Okay, so that's the ashtray. Oh sorry, the ashtray, the bottles of pop thing. All these are functioning. Okay, what next? I think it's time to go and have a look at the dash clocks next. Well, hopefully we've got the bits to just get this out of the way next. How was this? Let's get this out of the way next, I think. Looks like that was the bolt for that. Yeah, this little thing out of the way, let's sort of tidy this up a little bit. Try and get that bolt in. Might not actually need that bolt in, but I can try and guide that in some way. It has to be out before you can push it in. So pushing, when you screw that in, it pushes the other side out. So let's have a look at that. So that goes in, and you can push that in and tighten it up. Makes it look a little bit, hiding all the electrics and yeah. So that's that, you know. It just pulls in and out, you know. Sort of like, you know, as that is. I mean, I could have done that better. I didn't want to spend, you know, hours showing you all these little nuts and bolts, like, but all these things do have to come out if you want to get in to change the heater. All these little things have got to come in and out. So it's the way that is. Okay, that's that little section done. That's how it is so far. So I'm looking at this piece, it looks like it's snapped off there, and snapped off there, so I'm going to have to try and get it held in from this side by pushing this in. There we go, so that's held in by that, so there we go, that's that piece done. Okay, these plastic pieces are for the top of the dashboard, so I have 3 of those, so they all seem to be the same sort of thing. So these are the pieces that have to come out to get to these bolts. So when you want to undo these bolts, these have to sort of like come out, so just pushing those back in at the moment. All 3 of those. You can see this side as well. Snap, snap, all snap in. All look like a standard sort of piece. So I just go around the other side of the track here to do the last one. There it is, just there. So and snap it into place. Here we go. If you want to pop them out, you just pop them out, and they have to come out to be able to get to those bolts. This will hold you. At this point, I'm going to put these ones in now as well. See that one there? I didn't have to take that out for some reason, but that one's still in. But I'm going to snap this piece in next. It's that piece. I think you might need to, you know, so we look at finding that piece next, which is just here. So you got one of these pieces here. Hopefully it won't be a problem to put back in, as you know, it looked like something I didn't really need to take out, but can only go that way, so that's the way it was. So now I've got one bolt there, so these bolts all have to come out, so I'll look at getting those done now. Alright, so they're all the same sort of size spanners, you know, they all seem to be that size, so hopefully there's nothing to having to swap too many different things over. But I say this seems a bit fussy going in. Okay, that's one done. That's going easier. That's the 2. Got the other side to do as well, so quickly race over to the other side and get it all done in one routine. 2 over this side. These are the sort of main things that were holding it in, really. You know, those 3 on the top and these sides and all those. So there's no doubt about it, all this stuff has to be undone and taken apart to get into it. There's no other way around it. Okay, I'm going to have a look at putting the rubber pieces on next, so we'll go and get those. The intriguing box gets emptier. Okay, that's in right hand side, so that's a side for that side and a side for that side. Yeah, you know, finding all this stuff to get it ripped out, you know. It looks like they just pop back in plastics, just like plastic clips, and la-di-da, you got your lovely cover back, you know. It might have come out underneath that, you know. It might have been underneath that, or whatever, how you want to do that. But oh, it pops in from the side. There's one from the side there. Comes in from the side. You want to be really fussy about it, you know. La-di-da, it's got to be right. So there we go, that's in. La-di-da, got to be right. That's all good. And that's those shields done. We go and get that other shield over the other side completed as well. So you got that from the side, and these 3. And put the side one in first on this one. Easier. Yeah, much better putting the side one on first. So it's the first time I had to do any of this stuff. So that's all good for that. Should be able to put my own little... This is something that I had to put in for myself here, so I'll just get that done. Okay, yeah, that's my little bit of electrics put back in for myself. Okay, what I'm going to look at next is putting the clocks back in. You can see that the few little fiddly bits involved with this. There's one there, there's one there, yep, that's all good. Okay, bring the clocks through, ready to tidy up. Yeah. There's like 4, I think there's 4, not too sure how these go back in now, but we'll have a look at putting this back in at this point. As I remember it, I had to pop out these to pop these and move out these out of the way. You just pop out just so I could make it easy to put the screws back in. There's one of those. They pop off there. Where's the trigger? I just seemed to have it a moment ago. There is that button there. And slide out, move those out of the way to be able to get those in. So I'm going to have a look at putting these bolts in first. These ones, as it looks like these might be slightly out of place. Okay, so far. Okay, here we are looking at a design of this. Obviously, these bolts get put up. Let's have a look, see what's going on here. Doesn't seem to be nothing for those really. So those 2, looks like there was 2 for the clock on this side that were bolted in before this goes in, so I'll leave that there for now, and I'm going to get these two side ones in and go and get some bolts for those. Yeah, so I've been dedicated to show you every bolt really that needs to come in and out for this. I carry on trying to put every bolt in and out like it came out. It's like I'm already losing stuff. The steering wheel in the way, and I've just lost the bolt there, so I try and put this one in again. I'll lose another one no doubt, but it seems to be quite difficult to get my fingers down here to be able to get in, to be able to tighten out. I got it. Okay, got that one done, but got the one in loosely there. I seem to have lost the one that came out of it, so something's fell down here and I can't see where it's fallen to. There's a possibility it's got trapped in something. I'll let you know when I find out. I'm gonna have to look for that. Okay, yeah, I dropped a bolt there, you know, fiddling around with it. I don't know where it went to. I hope this doesn't happen with this one as well, but these were easy getting out, but putting them back in is another thing altogether. So yeah, I managed to get one of those back in. Okay, that's that one tight, and I don't like losing nuts and bolts and screws on the floor because they always seem to end up in your tyres, you know what I mean? They always seem to end up in tyres, so I don't know where that's gone, where it vanished to, but I've had to take these indicator things off here. You can't really see much what I'm doing here really with the camera, but okay, so we got that in and that in. So those are those two bolts. Let's have a look at getting this piece in. So you know, so the way that goes in, just goes in like that. It's very easy. I think there was like two more bolts. There's two more bolts on the bottom there to go in. They're just like to help keep the plastic dashboard in place. So there's a couple more bolts to go in here before this goes in on top like. Okay, two more to go in on this section. I'll put this one in first and get that one in. It looks like I'm going to need like the little screwdriver on this sort of stuff. This is where it gets all fiddly. It's getting all fiddly here. There's no space to move, or the angles of it are all sort of wrong like. And still able to work with this to a point here. See if we can get this one in. There it goes. There you got it going. Okay, that's that piece done. I don't think I really needed to push these in, like, you know, so I can't see behind the steering wheel what I'm doing there, but or my hand, but What a waste of filming that was, eh? Really got the camera in on all that time. So I've got those two in, that one and that one in there. Okay, that's those in. So drop this in now. How's that go? Goes into a clip side there. You can't really see nothing past the steering wheel, but you know, it's a pity you couldn't see nothing past the steering wheel there. But it's just 2 bolts now to go in on the top, 2 top section pieces. So that's in, and then you got these 2. So there's 4 to go in around that section. But with the steering wheel being in place, you know, as it is with the steering wheel there, there's that one, and that one to come out there. Yeah, these ones seem to be quite difficult to get in, so I put a bit of grease around the threads. Like you have to try and use a ratchet of some sort. It's sort of coming up to the end of it all now. It's a pity if we run out of battery power. So I seem to remember now I had to use a ratchet to undo these like this. This is some of the first stuff you have to take out. Obviously the last being put back together here in reverse process. You might want to sort of rewind the video or something, you know, to see how it goes there. So that's one side of that in. Let's see if we can get another side in over here. So I don't know if you can actually see this side. Try and direct the camera a bit better there. Okay, being a bit busy. The battery's got a flat just there a moment ago, but I've put my little section back on the top there. Got my stereo wired up and that. So I've got my wires done there. So it's all come back together well. You know, everything's in place. I've got it all sorted now. It's pretty much back together, man. It's almost like exactly as it was. So I'm just going to put these on, you know, this last shroud around here. But before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that these bolts are properly tight on my steering column. Oh no, here we are. Just make sure, and see these were quite loose, so make sure that they're tight. Because I only ratcheted them up earlier on. I know these were loose earlier on because, you know, that's why I come back to check them. But you don't want to forget, you know, when you tighten these up, you might as well tighten them up straight away. But at the time, you know, just sort of the last minute things here before I put this plastic back over. Okay, so that's all back together now. Put the plastics back over it now. Okay, here we are, last few bits. A few little bits here. These are the 2 parts for the how it is. So not too sure how this goes back together now, but let's just have a look at how it goes. Okay, so it's been a while. Obviously it just goes up underneath there. There you go, just like that. And piece of plastic on the top, and yeah, so getting this plastic in, I've just put a bolt underneath there, and there's another bolt underneath here that I can put in, you know, just to secure it in place. Can't really see the inputs for these. They're obviously the bolts. I don't actually seem to remember taking these ones out myself, but I think this was already left loose for me, you know, but that's how that one is. You know, whatever bolts you got to take out to get that off, it was always a bit loose, that, for me, so I'm not fussed about that. Okay, so there it is, the dashboard back in. Sweet. And that's you know, you have to do the reverse procedure to rip it all out, but that's putting it all back in. It's taken about an hour or two. Okay, you can see the dashboard is coming back together really well now. Originally, this piece was in on mine that came with it, and a sort of metal piece was there like that, and there was like rivets. That was a rivet there, so where you can see that at this point I had to drill the rivets out. So I thought, oh, you know, it was a part of, I mean, looking at it from here, I could have, you know, left it in, you know, it would have still been the same as the dashboard, but I thought it was originally welded. But, you know, it's a separate piece all by itself, and I don't think you would have, well, yeah, because the plastic had to come away from it, you see, that's it. I had to drill the rivets out of this section. So when I drilled, there you can see the rivets there, see the rivets, so it was originally like in there, but because it was like that, it was like riveted inside there, and I thought, oh, you know, it's stopping, it was riveted through the plastic, and because the plastic comes away from it, I had to do that. So, you know, I just drop this back in here now and leave that loose, like, you know, that's how it is. So, you know, it's a piece of metal really, just a piece of metal around loose in there. So you see that piece of metal in there now, just loose, like, you know. I'll probably just cut it off and forget about it, because I can't understand why, you know. So if you want this out, okay, you know, you have to pop it out from the inside. There we go. So there's a metal plate in there for some reason. I have no idea why they put a metal plate in that on this, but they put it in there for the plastic, and it sort of helped hold this dashboard together a bit there. I'm not going to be fussy about this, you know. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this piece of plastic out here. You know, it's a piece, I can put it back in if I want to drill it sometime, but for now, just put this back in like this. Yeah, there you go. And there we go, man, all solid. And there's a piece to go up underneath there, but I'm going to leave that open because I need to get at the buzzer. So I'm going to need to get a buzzer relay there soon. So that's that. And then it's just drop the top piece in. So I'll go and get the top piece now, and you can see how it's all come together with the little bits. I've got a few screws left over because yeah, there's probably a few things there that I might have not put some screws in for, but it's all solid, man. You know, you don't need to get fussy about these things. When these things go wrong, you know, it doesn't much matter where they go, like so. We'll just drop this back in for now. These just drop back in like so. Hopefully, there we go. So the plastic's in there. There's a couple of bolts in the side there to go. Got a little little clip here to go in there. Just give that a tidy. So that's that piece in there. Yep. Need to get that back out again. You know, just push them back out and just go in and out. These things just push in and out. So there we go with that. And that's pretty much the dashboard back in. You know, it's all back in together. So that's the dashboard back in. That's pretty much it, really. And that's ripping the dashboard out the other way. So basically I couldn't film it taking it apart because I didn't know what I'd have to go through taking it apart, but those are the nuts and bolts that have put, you know, if you look at it going backwards, you know, I filmed it all, putting it all back together, so it's all being put back together, so it's all put back together at this point. So if you need to take it apart, you can look at it in reverse order.